airports, you have ticket systems, and the actual airline. So there's lots of complexity, and most of that has nothing to do with design as itself. But you have to tackle all of those things to be able to design anything for the air travel environment. But there's also lots of opportunities. So you have a lot of things to make more smooth. You have an ability to increase the efficiency and also to make the customer experience better by deploying modern digital services. And airlines and other stakeholders in the air travel industry have lots of contact with their customers. They have a captive audience in the aircraft for several hours, and they are able to actually serve them both digitally and also by the means of the basic customer service.
If you look at even one simple journey, you have quite a lot of different physical places where you actually interact with several touch points. So you have your desktop computer that you're using at home, you have the airport, you have all the info screens and stuff there, you're using your mobile phone there. Then you have the airplane, where you have all the systems on the airplane, you're using them in that context. Then you might transfer on another airport using the services there, your mobile phone there. You have another airplane, then you arrive at the destination airport, which is then a third airport. You have different services there, you're using your own device there in a different context. And then you arrive at your destination, and then you still have different media and different touch points that you have in that different context.
And a single trip can take up to 24 hours or something like that. And you might use like 8 hours of digital services during that trip.
So, from design perspective, this is of course an interesting problem. So how do you actually create meaningful service that people actually want to use in that context? So given that you have so many different touch points and different services that you do, you have to actually think holistically and think how do you bridge the gap between different touch points when you move from one context to other, from one media or one touch point to the other. So how do you actually how do you bridge the gap between these touch points? And all of the services that you're using in some physical environment, so they always are, the digital services are somehow in context of something physical. So they're not standalone products that you use, but they actually enable you to do something in the physical world. But even with just the understanding that you have from the environment and great thoughts, you actually need technical and political capability to actually materialize the changes. So as Vesa mentioned, there are so many stakeholders, businesses around the services, so you actually need to have more than just great ideas to do the services.
So to touch the first point mentioned on the previous slide, we have an example from the Finnair case, and the first one is, well, this is basically what happens if you take a longer trip with their modern fleet, which we designed. And the first thing you do is you have your mobile phone and your computer, and this example is from the app, and everything starts days away from your actual journey. And here you might be in any physical place, and it closes up to the airport, where there's plenty of displays around, but your mobile phone is the only one who knows where you are going. And the service actually follows you to the destination as well. So that's the role of the mobile app. It always knows where you are going, and it knows how many minutes do you have to spare before you have to be at your gate. So we're able to bring a better experience than the actual airport displays or any other systems that aren't personalized. But during the actual flight, the mobile app doesn't have to do much. So it simply goes to your pocket and tells you that you have 5.5 hours before you're at your destination, and other systems take control.
But then when you're actually on board the aircraft, you have the digital services on the plane as well as the physical services. So for example here, the screen that you have on front of you, it's a great place to connect the existing services of the airplane, for example ordering gin and tonics through the service. But this would also mean that it doesn't mean that you just create the interface for this particular screen, but you actually have to think through the whole process of how would the crew actually get notified that somebody wants a gin tonic, how to get the message, how to deliver that. So you have to kind of think about the whole experience. So it's connecting the personal service to the digital service. And then you have, for example, you have Wi-Fi on board. So if you would be browsing the Wi-Fi on your own device, then that's a good place to, for example, convey information that's textual. So you would have, for example, the destination guides and so forth. So this is something that you would go to on your iPad. So the point here is that you have several different services and different media, and they all look different, but they have a certain purpose that they do, and basically the design follows the purpose. So the mobile application is very clean, and it tells you exactly what to do, whereas the in-flight entertainment screen lives in the airplane context, and actually Vesa will talk more about what this means.
Yes, so as Aapo mentioned, you have to design for not only the digital experience, but also the context. And in this case, we were designing a service for the new A350 fleet for Finnair, which has this nice lighting scheme going around. So the idea is that the passengers are brought to the journey, and they have different lighting schemes that they use to actually help the passengers relax. So you might be in the plane for 12 hours on a long-haul flight from Asia to Helsinki, and the lighting helps you to do what that moment is suited for. So if you're trying to actually eat or read, you have a lighting scheme for that, and for relaxation, and they also have a Northern Lights highlight thing going on. And so when starting the design, we noticed that, well, there's 300 LED screens in the aircraft, so we have actually more control of the lighting than the actual cabin lighting strips that are installed in the cabin. So what we did is, well, this is from when the passengers board the aircraft, when there's still no interactive use, so we have a huge opportunity to actually make that lighting feel more more impactful when you board the aircraft. So the screens repeat the same colors as the lighting. And during each of the phases, the screens actually adapt to the current lighting scheme on the cabin. And here's the individual entertainment screen that the passengers use. And compared to the mobile app, you can see that it's not that similar. There's no Finnair brand blue on white thing going on, but instead it follows the context of the cabin. And that's important because we're aiming for consistency, so the experience needs to be consistent, but it needs to be consistent on a conceptual level so that it feels and communicates the same values, but it's not similar, so everything shouldn't look equal. And the idea that's carried from the mobile app to this screen is it still states you what's going to happen next. So next up is the departure, and the mobile app stated you that you have 12 minutes till boarding, or you have 5 minutes of remaining flight time. And this screen basically tells you how you're going to spend the next 12 hours on the aircraft.
And yeah, there was a slight shift in the background. So when the dinner time comes, they would shift the lighting of the cabin to slightly dimmer lighting, and so the entertainment system follows that. And the other thing that we show here is, for example, the dinner. So this solves two problems. First of all, you as a passenger, you might want to know whether there's dinner served, whether it's included in the price or not, and if there's dinner, what are the dinner options. So basically, when I enter the plane, I can already check when the dinner is and what are the dinner options. And from the crew's perspective, the current process or the process before had been that once they start serving the dinner, they would have to ask individually every 300 passengers, what would you like to have, chicken pasta or hamburger beef? And you might not even have common language with the people. So what the digital service can do, that we can show the dinner options in the 7 main languages that are the main languages that Finnair customers use. So basically we can use the contextual information in your language. So when the crew actually comes to your place, you already know what you're going to have, and you can just order the food. So saves money and saves stress.
And that might sound simple, but it's not that easy to get this stuff on board because it's changing all the time. So, and it's a closed environment again. So bringing the airplane to the internet environment was quite a challenge.
Yeah, and so again, as the flight goes on, the lighting scene on the plane changes, and the entertainment background basically follows that. And then there's the opportunity to upsell stuff that they will have the cards, so you will know that at this point the crew will be going through. If you want to buy liquor or chocolate, then this is the time to do it. And as the flight goes on, and the cabin lights will be dimmed for you to get some sleep. As well, if you have the entertainment screens open, those won't be like super bright lighting the cabin, but actually those will be also dimmed down to the rest lighting.
So it might seem simple from a design perspective alone, and well, I hope that it would be more simple, but there's lots of technical and political things to do to be able to do this in this context. So as most designers, we started up with pen and paper and then moved to sketch prototypes, but quite quickly that wasn't enough because the users have to actually manipulate these physical things to get their things done. So quite quickly we moved to a simulated environment of the actual aircraft. So this is from Finnair HQ in Vantaa, and we're actually testing the screens. And this is quite a good example of how our team works. So we have all the team members in the same space, and they are developers and designers working together, making sure that the software works as we want it to work. And most often it's like only a short amount of time that we used with prototypes, and then we move to the actual devices. Here's our awkward high-five moment. And well, it was like 1 month or 2 months into the project that we had this simulated environment in our working space.
Yeah, but actually the simulated environment that we had at Vantaa was not complete. We only had few screens and limited functionality. For example, we didn't have any satellite connection over there. So in order to test the full features of the system, we would have to actually travel as a team to California, where the hardware vendor is. So there we'd have a bit closer environment to the actual environment. So at this moment, Finnair had just purchased the airplanes, so they didn't exist yet. So basically, we didn't have an environment where to go because the planes were still manufactured at Toulouse at the Airbus facilities. So this was as close as we could get to the real environment. So the whole team went there and made sure that it works in the actual environment or close to the actual environment. But as soon as we got the airplane, the design work doesn't end in the fact that you create the visuals or the UX. You actually have to go into the actual environment and make sure everything works there, check that everything works together. You have the mobile phone, the mobile app, you have the entertainment system, the portal, so you make sure that everything works in the context as they're supposed to do. This is actually, the press actually went to the airplane before we went. So the press flew the plane from Toulouse to Helsinki, and then we were able to go to the airplane and see how things work.
And we had 3 hours before the first commercial flight to actually deploy the software and make sure everything works. And at the same time, they were fixing the cabin, so there were some distractions as well.
But since we were in the airplane, so we had the whole team working in the airplane, making sure everything works. So, and if they didn't work, we had the means to make it work. So it was a shared responsibility of the whole team to get it working, have the designs work as they're designed in the actual environment, so that when the customers, the users come, it works like it's supposed to.
Yeah. Thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, hi. I was just actually interested because I've been some of these flights, and just how it actually works, because one flight was delayed, I don't remember if it was what was the reason, if it was delayed actually the flight or there was preparation problems inside the plane itself. But I remember that there was that the system itself, that it wasn't responsive for the delay. So is it somehow like, then there was confusion, you know, with people like, oh, when can I do my purchases? Like, it should be now. Oh my God, what's going on? When can I have my food? It was like, I remember something like this.
Yeah, it's actually the timeline which we showed is something that the crew can control. Or they have a tablet computer where they can actually place all the events on the timeline. So if there was an event that it was incorrect, it might be that the crew didn't actually do that.
Yeah, that's what I imagined. So I was just wondering that I would imagine that it wouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't see them doing it.
So they actually have the base timeline there based on the route. So if everything goes as expected, they don't have to do anything. But if there's a change in the schedule, then the crew has to react on the tablet and to actually set the times that the passengers see. And there might be some getting adjusted to, because they don't have to do that on the old aircraft.
Yeah, and we worked very closely with the crew members, so we had selected crew members working jointly in the project. So anything that we would do, we would go together with them. For example, like these cases, that they would have actually the tools to do changes. And I personally have been writing the education material for the crew, so but I haven't been responsible making sure that everybody does what's supposed to be done in this situation. But yeah, that's something that the crew has the possibility to do changes if there are, because there are changes that will take place.